There's a particular kind of exhaustion that nobody really talks about. It's not the exhaustion of working too hard or sleeping too little. It's the exhaustion of a mind that never fully stops. A mind that walks into a room and within seconds has already registered the tension between two people in the corner, noticed that someone's laugh was slightly too loud to be genuine, and picked up on something slightly off in the way a friend said, "I'm fine." Nobody asked for any of that information. It just arrived. If that sounds familiar, if your brain runs this kind of background program constantly, whether you want it to or not, then this video is going to feel very personal to you. Because what you're dealing with isn't overthinking in the casual sense people throw around. It's a specific psychological pattern called hyperawareness. And today we're going to break down exactly where it comes from, what it does to a person over time, and most importantly, how to stop being consumed by your own mind without losing the depth that makes you who you are. Where this actually comes from. Psychology generally traces hyperawareness back to two very different starting points. And understanding which one applies to you changes everything about how you relate to it. The first group are people who were simply born this way. Researchers call this trait sensory processing sensitivity, and people who carry it are often called highly sensitive persons, HSPs. From birth, their nervous system processes everything at a higher intensity than average. Sounds are louder. Emotions land harder. The emotional atmosphere in a room registers like a physical sensation. The world for these people has always existed in high definition. It's not something that happened to them, it's just how their system was built. The second group developed hyperawareness as a survival response. And this one is where things get really important to understand. Imagine growing up in a home where the emotional atmosphere was unpredictable. Maybe a parent's mood shifted without warning. Maybe tension was always present but never directly addressed. Maybe you learned very early that something could go wrong at any moment, and the only way to stay safe was to stay alert. So your nervous system did what nervous systems do. It adapted. You learned to read the room before you walked into it. You memorized the sound of footsteps on the stairs and already knew what kind of mood was coming. You watched faces carefully. You listened for tone beneath the words. You became extraordinarily good at detecting the early signs of danger. Neuroscientists call this hypervigilance. And here's the part that matters most. It worked. That awareness protected you. It helped you navigate an environment that genuinely required that level of attention. The problem is that as an adult, in a world that is no longer that dangerous, the system never got the message that it could stand down. The alarm is still running. The scanning never stopped. And what once kept you safe is now quietly exhausting you. You're not broken. You're carrying protection that outlived the threat it was built for. Sign 1, you live in constant analysis mode. For most people, a conversation is just a conversation. But for someone with hyperawareness, every interaction runs through an invisible second layer of processing simultaneously. Your boss sends you a message that says, "Can we chat later today?" For a typical person, that's just a meeting request. For you, your brain immediately starts reading the temperature of those 5 words. Is the tone different from usual? Is this phrasing more formal? What happened yesterday that might have led to this? This isn't a choice. It happens automatically and immediately. Part of what's happening neurologically is that the brain's default mode network, the system responsible for reflection and self-referential thinking, tends to be significantly more active in hyperaware people. In most people, it switches on mainly during downtime. In hyperaware people, it's essentially always running in the background. The result? You can sit in a quiet office all day and come home feeling like you ran a marathon. Because mentally, you kind of did. Half of you was present in the room. The other half was cataloging, cross-referencing, and analyzing everything that happened in it. Sign 2, you watch yourself from the outside. There's a psychological term for thinking about your own thinking. It's called metacognition. Everyone has this ability to some degree. But in hyperaware people, it becomes a loop that never fully closes. You don't just feel an emotion, you immediately observe yourself feeling it. Then you evaluate whether the emotion is appropriate. Then you judge yourself for having it. It looks like this. You feel anxious before a social event. Instead of just acknowledging the anxiety and moving through it, your brain immediately starts asking, why am I anxious about this? Is this rational? Other people don't feel this way about normal events. What does this say about me? Even positive emotions get intercepted. You're genuinely enjoying a moment, laughing at dinner with friends, and then some part of your mind floats up to the ceiling, looks down at you, and starts evaluating. Was that laugh too much? Did that comment land okay? Are you being authentic right now or performing? It's like trying to dance while constantly watching yourself in a mirror and correcting your posture. You might not miss a single technical step, but the flow is gone. The joy is happening somewhere slightly outside of you, and you're watching it instead of living it. Sign 3, you've lost your innocence in relationships. This one is quiet and painful, and most hyper-aware people recognize it immediately. At some point, you stopped being able to take things at pure face value. Not because you want to be suspicious, but because your brain automatically looks for the layer beneath the surface. Someone compliments your work, and part of you wonders what they want. Someone is unusually kind, and your mind starts asking why today specifically. A friend apologizes, and you find yourself wondering whether they genuinely mean it or whether they're just trying to reduce the tension. This isn't cynicism exactly. It's pattern recognition that has extended into emotional territory. You've seen enough of the gap between what people say and what they actually mean that your brain now checks for that gap automatically, even when it isn't there. The loneliness this creates is specific and hard to explain. You're surrounded by people, relationships, conversations, but there's a thin layer of glass between you and the experience of fully trusting them. You see clearly, but that same clarity keeps you slightly at a distance from the warmth you're actually looking for. Sign 4. You absorb other people's emotions like a sponge. For hyper-aware people, empathy isn't something they switch on when someone needs support. It's a permanent state. You walk into a meeting, and before anyone speaks, you've already registered that 2 people in the room are in conflict. You sit next to a stranger who seems anxious, and your own chest starts to tighten. A friend tells you about something painful they're going through, and 3 days later that pain is still sitting somewhere in your body. Neuroscience points to mirror neuron systems as part of what's happening here. When highly empathic people observe someone experiencing an emotion, their brain activates in ways that simulate that same emotion internally. For most people, this is manageable. For hyper-aware people, it crosses from understanding into absorption. You become the emotional regulator for every room you're in. People feel genuinely understood around you. They open up to you. They seek you out. And all of that feels meaningful. Until you get home and realize you're carrying 10 people's emotional weight along with your own, and nobody thought to check how you were doing. The person who holds space for everyone often has nobody holding space for them. Sign 5, your body keeps score of everything. Hyperawareness doesn't stay in the mind. It moves into the body. There's a concept in neuroscience called interoception, your brain's ability to sense and interpret signals from inside your body. In hyperaware people, this system runs at an elevated sensitivity. A slightly faster heartbeat after caffeine doesn't just feel like alertness. It triggers a cascade of monitoring. The brain detects the change, searches its database for what that sensation has meant before, and sometimes interprets a completely normal physical response as the beginning of something threatening. This creates an exhausting loop. Physical sensation leads to mental alarm, which leads to stress response, which creates more physical sensation, which the brain monitors even more closely. Your body becomes a source of constant data that your mind feels obligated to analyze. And even in moments of genuine safety and calm, some part of you stays braced for something. How to stop being consumed by your own mind. Here's the most important thing to understand. The goal is not to become less aware. You cannot uninstall perception the way you uninstall an app. And honestly, you wouldn't want to. This depth is also where your greatest strengths live. The goal is to stop carrying everything you see. First, not every signal is a message meant for you. Someone replies slowly to your text. A colleague walks past without smiling. Your brain will offer interpretations immediately. Practice pausing before accepting them. Most of the time, the slower reply is tiredness, not distance. The colleague had a headache, not a problem with you. You're allowed to wait for actual evidence before building a case. Second, you can observe an emotion without becoming it. Anxiety shows up. Your heart beats faster. Instead of immediately analyzing what it means and why it's there, try simply naming it. There's anxiety present right now. Not, I am anxious and I need to figure out why. You can notice without immediately investigating. Let the feeling move through without turning it into a project. Third, not everything you perceive requires action. You might clearly see someone's insecurity, You might sense instability in a relationship before anyone else does. That insight is real. But seeing something clearly doesn't mean you're obligated to fix it, address it, or carry it. Clarity without boundaries isn't wisdom. It's just weight. The shift that changes everything. When hyper-aware people start practicing these principles, something genuinely remarkable happens. The awareness doesn't disappear. It matures. You still see deeply. You still read rooms and people with accuracy. But you're no longer being pulled under by everything you perceive. You start using your awareness to be more present rather than using it to predict and protect against every possible pain. The world doesn't become simpler. People don't become less complicated. But you stop trying to solve every equation of human behavior before it finishes writing itself. Your mind was never the problem. The weight you were putting on it was. You cannot turn off the light inside your mind. But you can change what you do with it. From a sharp beam that exposes every flaw and threat into something steadier, something warmer, bright enough to see clearly, gentle enough to finally let yourself rest.